Hey everyone, and welcome to an episode of Monday Mornings. I'm your host, Michelle Branch, and so you guys, we are going to be talking about the Netflix series, the miniseries of The Fall of the House of Usher, and how this relates to personal finances, specifically as it relates to budgeting and saving. But before we go into that, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so we can help out with the algorithm. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Threads at Archie Financial. You could also follow me on Twitter, now X, at Archie_finance. So again, you guys, today we are going to be discussing about how this Netflix miniseries relates to personal finance when it comes to budgeting and saving. Now, just to give you guys a brief summary on what this show is about, it's pretty much this family, billion-dollar family, who is having some issues with the supernatural, particularly this relationship that they have with a demon. When these two individuals, a brother and a sister, twin siblings, had sold their souls to a devil, they had also, well, not the devil, but the demon named Verna, played by Carla Gugino. They ended up selling their souls in the bloodline of the children so that way they can accumulate all of this wealth and riches and without having to go through the process of growing wealth the way that most of us actually have to go about doing this, right? Getting a good job, if you are going to build a business, what that actually looks like, a slow, methodical, well thought out, calculated process. Whereas for them, all they had to do was commit some crimes, sell their soul, and actually get there. Now, we're not going to speak to the whole premise of the series because there were a few things about the show that really stood out to me, not just as a Christian America First conservative, but also as a financial professional, specifically as it relates to budgeting and to saving. Now, the first clip I'm going to show you guys is a part of a monologue by the character of Madeline Usher. The character was played by Mary McDonnell. She dies in everything that she does, and this was no different. Spoiler alert if you haven't already watched the series. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to play that first clip for you guys because this is going to give you an idea of where my head is as it relates to what the culture is telling us to do as it relates to spending and budgeting and saving. And some of the times we're just getting involved in these things and we don't even know why we're doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and play that first clip for you guys.
We turn men into cum fountains and women into factories, cranking out what? An impoverished workforce there for the labor and to spend what little they make consuming. And what do we teach them to want? Houses they can't afford, cars that poison the air, single-serve plastics, clothes made by starving children in third world countries, and they want it so bad that they're begging for it, they're screaming for it, they're insisting upon it, and we're the problem.
So what is she saying in that clip, you guys? That they are telling us what to want. When we talk about big business, the banks, big governments, they're the ones insisting that we get involved in certain things, that we tether ourselves to these products that are associated with debt. We want the fancy car, there's a car note. And we do it anyway, knowing that we're going to end up paying this debt. We're going to be paying this debt for the next 10 years. 300 and up on a car note for cars we can't afford. They tell us to want homes that we can't afford. Yeah, I'm going to live in the city only 20 minutes away from my job because, well, it's only 20 minutes away. But you know damn well, excuse my language, that you can't afford it. So it's not that having the home is a bad thing. It's not that having nice clothes or living in the city not that far from your job, having a nice car. It's not that these things are bad. It's that when you can't afford to do these things, it ends up financially hurting you. And a lot of what's going on between millennials and Gen Zers, we say things like, it's not our fault. It's the boomers. It's everybody else's fault. It's the banks. It's the government, right? And it's not that that's wrong, but we do play a role here, that they are telling us to want these things. And we just go out there and buy them because, well, we want them so desperately, so badly. And so we just continue to go out there and buy them. And then we want to put the finger up at big business, at the banks. We want to blame them for why our lives are not where we need them to be. That every time Bill Week comes around, we just start to lose our minds. And it's, again, not like it's not just their fault. It's not like it's just that they're not part of the problem, but we are too part of the problem as consumers. And it's about time that we started to recognize that. And that takes us to the second clip of Madeline Usher's monologue. She kind of goes in depth about what she thinks about the consumers. So I'm going to go ahead and play the second clip for you guys.
These fucking monsters, these fucking consumers, these fucking mouths. They point at you and me like we're the problem. They fucking invented us. They beg for us, they're begging for us too.
It's like so disrespectful. She called us monsters. That we're the ones that are part of the problem. And here's the thing, she's not wrong. She's absolutely right. You can't expect big business, big government, and the banks to care when for so many years they've just been encouraging more and more people by the millions, by the generations, to constantly get themselves involved with this number of debt. Whose fault is that? It's not just their fault. They are part of the problem. They're a huge part of the problem. But so are we.
I'm the bad guy.
We desire them. We begged for it. We beg for the debt when we want the credit card. We beg for the debt when we want the fancy car that we can't afford. We beg for financial stress when we get the apartment that we can't afford, purchase homes that we can't afford. We beg for them to supply us with things that we know we can't afford. Begging, begging you. And then we're mad at them as if we have no role to play. It's not 100% our fault for why we end up in the financial mess that we have today, but it is our responsibility to try to deter those things from happening to any other generation, from going further into the abyss of debt. It is our responsibility. And so when you have people like myself and others and other influencers trying to convince you to go with the biblical financial principles, to go with the process that'll keep you from going into the abyss of debt, to keep you from getting so caught up in what the marketplace is telling you what to do. Because again, how much of what you say you want is actually what you want? Is it what you want, or did culture tell you should have this? Is it what you want, or did TV tell you to have this? Is it what you want, or did your parents tell you to have these things? It's, again, not that it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to get a college degree, but if it's going to put you $500,000 in debt, maybe you should wait. Maybe you should find a different alternative to achieving the goal. They're telling us to do these things that we know for sure that it's not going to be the only way to achieve these goals that we have. They're telling us to want these things and we go for it. And we're to blame, partly to blame for why we end up in the mess that we're in, to the point where we don't even see a way out of it. And that takes us to Carla Gugino's character, Verna, the demon, who goes in depth about what could be if we just decided to be smarter with the money that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and play that last clip for you guys.
It's one of my favorite things about human beings. Starvation, poverty, disease. You could fix all that just with money. And you don't. I mean, if you took just a little bit of time off the vanity voyages, pleasure cruising, billionaire space race, hell, you stop making movies and TV for 1 year and you spend that money on what you really need, you could solve it all with some despair.
We could solve it all with some despair. That's the part that stood out to me the most. Now, I'm not speaking on a global scale. Obviously, that's what the demon is talking about. But speaking individually, as it relates to our own individual personal finances, if we just prioritized our essentials over our desires, where would we be? If we took the year or the time that we needed to prioritize getting ourselves into a better financial position, we not only could solve our own problems as it relates to not freaking out and stressing out over how we're going to cover the budgets for our bills. How are we going to do what we need to do? We're not going to lose our minds every time rent comes around, every time bill week comes around, because that's covered. Essentially, having the budget gives us the control that we need to see where our money is going, to keep us from being led like sheep to a slaughter when the marketplace and other influences are telling us to buy these things. And we could actually prioritize our essentials over the pleasure cruises, over our vanity, over the desires, over the things that are not helping us, that are putting us in harm's way, that are only attaching and tethering us to more debt. That ultimately, if we just prioritized our money, we could solve all of our problems.
Dobby is free.
That if we follow the biblical principles, rather than listening to the cultural toxic influences that tells us to continue into the abyss of debt and digging ourselves even deeper into that hole, why not just put ourselves in a much better position? You could do all of these things and still have money to spare. That's what the budget is for. The importance of saving gives you opportunities. You're prepared for all hell to break loose, pun intended, considering the series that we're talking about. Let's not be the dumb humans that Verna is speaking to, having money and not being smart about it where we don't know where we're going. A wise man stores choice foods and oils. That's savings. And the borrower is slave to the lender. That's scripture. That is scripture. And that's where we need to understand here. Now, sometimes it's not just about getting into heaven. I obviously believe that it's one of the reasons why, but sometimes it's just in our own best interest. You know, you don't necessarily have to be a Christian to understand that saving your money and budgeting is just what wise people should be doing. And take it from somebody who didn't do that. I went most of my 20s, I turned 29 this year, not budgeting, not saving. And you just don't want to put yourself in that position. And so I implore, especially Gen Zers, if you can avoid that circumstance, don't listen to the people who are telling you not to do that. It's not in your best interest. Don't be the dumb human that Werner is talking about. And don't be so greedy and so eager to get rich so quick that you end up like Robert and Madeline Usher selling their soul and their bloodline to get rich. Because, hey, in the end, the richest person wasn't the person who had all the zeros in the bank account. The richest person who was the one who was able to go home and spend the time with their family, their loved ones. Ultimately, you have a choice to make. You can live a good life even if you don't have all those zeros attached to your name. And rest assured, by working hard and following these principles and staying true to that, there is a good chance and a proven process laid out before you, if you are willing to do the work, that you can have all those zeros attached to your name without having to lose your dignity or your soul. It's quite possible. Maybe we should be prioritizing our essentials over our desires. And by doing that, guess what? You'll still have money left over to spare to go towards the desires. If you would like to continue this conversation, you go ahead and you continue watching Money Morning Show on YouTube and Rumble. You can follow me at Archie Financial on Instagram and Threads, and Archie_finance on Twitter. I'm excited about this content. I'm excited about the show. Thank you all for watching, and you all have a wonderful day. And let's not forget, let God in your wallet. God bless.